Alright, in this section we're going to be learning all about how to paint landscapes. So the first project we're going to work on is painting a landscape or a landscape study from an actual photograph. And this would also apply if you wanted to paint from life. So if you had like an iPad or something like that, you could actually sit in front of a landscape and paint it, or you can paint from a photograph, either one. But let's go ahead and get started. So what we want to do is first we want to block out our composition and also get all of the layers and shapes in there. And you'll see why we do this later. So that's going to be our first step. So let's start with the sky. So for the sky, I'm just going to go ahead, I'm going to select this blue back here, and then using my brush tool, I'm just going to go ahead and paint in my entire background. Make sure you're doing this on a separate layer, so you don't want it on this background layer that our photograph and this gray background are on. You want this to be on a completely separate layer. Could probably turn that brush size up a bit. Alright, great. So that's good enough. I'm going to go ahead and put this in a group because we're going to have different files within here. So I'm going to grab that layer, put it in that group, and I'm going to call this group Sky. Just so I can remember what's what, I can go ahead and close that folder. And then let's go ahead and move on to the next part. So the next layer is going to be this mountain range right here. So what we want to do is we're going to be creating clipping layer masks throughout the course that we're going to be able to apply snow and different colors to each mountain range. And so we need to separate the shape of these mountains into different layers. So I'm going to go ahead and select one of these darker blue colors in here. Maybe I'll select this darker color over here. And we're not necessarily going to use this color. We might change it, we might do things to it, but this is just so we can at least start shaping out the mountain. If you wanted to, you could really use any color. I recommend that you use a color that is about the same value so you can see the difference in values with each one of these mountain ranges. And let's go ahead and we want to basically capture the same shape of this mountain. So it kind of goes like that. I'm just going to draw this in over here just to kind of help me visualize the basic shapes a little bit more. So basically coming straight down from there, we have about that much distance from the top to the bottom. So we can go ahead and put that guy right there, which will angle back up like that. And then that guy kind of comes straight down like that. Then this comes up like this. And then down like that. Alright, and then we can go ahead and use our eraser. Let's just erase all of that out. That was just to kind of help us visualize the shape and about the size of the mountain range. So all of this is basically going to be one mountain range on one layer. So what we want to do is we want to just basically paint the silhouette of that mountain and try to capture it as best we can. We can change things a little bit, especially if there's something that we think will make it look better. For the most part, let's try to capture it the same. So right now this is going to be a really rough shape, and we can come back and use our eraser to really shape out some of those little details. I'm going to go ahead and erase this out and repaint that in. Kind of should come up right there. Like that. Get this little guy right there. Then I'll use my eraser. I'm just going to come in here and erase out the silhouette the way I want it, and add in little shapes and points and stuff like that to add more detail to that mountain range. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of fill in some of these transparent areas, because when we create a layer mask is going to take into account the transparency of that layer. So if something's kind of transparent and you try to add color to a layer mask on top of that, it's going to make that area that's transparent. So like here, for example, if that's part of the layer mask, when I fill that in, it's going to fill it in transparent and only be as opaque as it is right there. So we want to make sure that we fill that in nice and dark. Also, don't worry if you don't get the mountain range shaped exactly how you want it, or Don't feel like you can't ever come back and change this, because even after we start adding snow and stuff to it, because it's going to be a layer mask, we can always come back and repaint and re-erase areas to reshape that profile. All right, great. I'm going to go ahead and bring my brush size up and now fill in all of this area down here. I'm going to bring it probably somewhere down to here. Most of this will be covered up, but let's just make sure that we're extending it far enough down. All right, great. All right, let's go ahead. Also, another thing is, since these are on different layers, I can do things like I can move this mountain range down a little bit if I think it's too high up, and I think it is a little bit too high up, so I'm going to move it down just a little bit with my arrow keys. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put this in a group or a folder. Whoops. Just drag that in there. I'm going to call this Mountains 1. We can go ahead and close that. Let's go ahead and move on to the next mountain range. So the next one is going to be right here. So I'm going to go ahead and color pick one of these colors. I'm going to go with probably something like this. I want it to be quite a bit darker than this mountain range right here. I just select that layer so I can paint. So that way it stands out from it. Let's go ahead and start painting this in. So if we come straight down from right here, it's a little bit thick. If we come straight down from there, somewhere around there is where this mountain range should start. And then somewhere right about down there, it should start to angle a little bit differently. So maybe that needs to angle up a little bit more. Then we can angle like this. I'll go ahead and use my eraser and erase out these guidelines. Now, if you want to, you can also change the profile of these mountain ranges. I mean, we are doing a study, so if you feel like you're not confident in painting this, go ahead and try to copy what you see in the photo. But if you want, you can change some of these mountain ranges and kind of add your own design to them and stuff. It's up to you, or you can move the composition around, stuff like that. And if you want to, just make 2 versions of this file and paint it once where you copy it with me, and then paint it another time and just make your own changes and try to be a little bit more creative with it. Maybe try changing the colors. Maybe see if you could paint it into a night scene. It's really up to you, but you don't have to. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and take my eraser, and I'm going to erase out my profile for my mountain edge. Switch back to my brush, and I'll just switch back between these two until I get this profile looking the way I want it. All right, great. Let's go ahead, put this into its own folder, call this folder Mountains 2. Let's add a new layer, and now let's do the next mountain range. So the next one is going to be right here. So I'm going to go ahead and select probably this darker color right here so we can differentiate it between this sort of mid-ground mountain range. And this mountain range, I'm just gonna include basically coming across like this, coming straight down like that. We get kind of that point right there. Now, if you wanted to, you could split every little piece of these mountains up into different layers. I mean, this whole area right there could be a different layer. And this whole layer over here could be its own layer, and this area over here could be its own layer. each one of these pieces of the mountain could be split up into their own layer, but I want to keep it a little bit simple. So I'm just going to make it into 3 basically layers of mountains. All right, perfect. Now our last layer is going to be this pathway. I'm not going to worry about the grass because that's going to be its own texture layer. We're not really going to use a clipping layer mask for that. So let's go ahead, put this into its own folder. We'll call this Mountain 3. Or maybe let's just call this Hills because these are more like hills. All right, and then let's go ahead and add one more layer. Let's go ahead and select one of these colors on here. I'm going to go for more of a darker color. Maybe I'll darken that just a little bit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to block this out as best I can, and then I'll come back in with my eraser and probably my lasso tool and try to reshape it a little bit. But I'm going to block it in first, and then we'll go from there. I'll come across like this. Now, drawing directly to the side of your reference or directly below or above or whatever makes it a lot easier because you can kind of line things up with your eyes. You can kind of imagine a line coming straight down like we've been doing and line those things up. Which, by drawing that line, I can actually see that it needs to come further over like that. I could probably use it here as well. So that line is good. Let's see about this one. That one probably needs to be moved over more like that. Draw a line coming down like that. So that line needs to be moved way over there. Use my eraser to erase this out. Find out where that corner is, so right about there. All right, great. Now let's go ahead and erase out all these guidelines. Then using my lasso tool, we have a, well actually it's a polygonal lasso tool. I'm going to go ahead and draw out this shape with really straight lines. Just like that. And now what I can do is I can invert that selection, hit delete so it deletes everything on the outside of it, reinvert that so now it has everything inside of it selected, and using my brush tool I'm just going to fill that in. I could fill this in with the fill tool, but I just want to get a little bit of texture in there as well, so using my brush is going to allow me to kind of do that. Alright, let's go ahead and unselect out of that, see how that looks. Looks pretty good. I think up here it could get a little bit thinner, so I'm going to go ahead, use my lasso tool and just thin that out by selecting that area, hitting delete. That looks a little bit better. I'm also going to use my lasso tool and I'm going to reshape this area right here. Alright, let's go ahead and zoom out and see how that looks. I think that's looking pretty good. Alright, so there we go. There's what we need to do for the first step of painting a landscape like this, is breaking it up into their own layers so that we can create clipping layer masks and then paint within those. It'll make a little bit more sense in the next lecture once we start painting in all the textures and different colors on each one of these layers. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.